Welcome back, Shalloners, and welcome back, Dash Dolls. Today, we're continuing the fallout and the drama from Kourtney Kardashian and Kim's physical fight, like nails, windmill arms, moving into other rooms. It was a mess. And we talked about it last week, and we talked about kind of like who was right and who was wrong and setting boundaries and how to get people to respect you and stuff like that. And now today, we're going to talk about the fallout from this fight and, more importantly, Kourtney's victim narrative. And we're not just going to drag Kourtney for filth. We are going to drag ourselves for filth as well, because we are too. We're going to talk about how to snap your own victim narrative. And trust me, child, at some point or another, we've all got one. And how to accept feedback in a way that doesn't feel so like catastrophic and wounding, and also maintains our relationship with the people we want in our lives. We're going to break it all down. We're also going to drag her for filth. We're going to drag her for filth. But first, just want to remind you guys that if you have a love question, head to my website, shallonlester.com, and click Get Help. Also, follow me on Instagram. I let you vote on the next video topic. I think there's a vote up there right now for the Tiger King topic. You know, we're going to be doing some breakdowns of that, don't you worry. And if you have like a birthday shout out you want to send to someone, a little visual pep talk, you can find me and book a video shout out with me on Cameo at ShallonXO. Oh, also I'm on TikTok giving you guys some daily quotes and inspiration. I'm not dancing, I promise. You're welcome. Speaking of things I'm not doing, apparently I'm not doing my hair anymore. Like, you see, this is what happens. You guys enable me. You're like, your hair looks so good up. I'm like, well, I think I look like a light bulb, but that's okay. You like it, and it is such a pain in the ass to do my hair every day, and it ruins my hair. So I'll give you one H. I'll give you hoops, or I'll give you hair. It's gonna be hoops. I'm sorry. And I'll give you face. I'll beat the face. I'm not gonna beat my hair up. It's much less forgiving. So let's recap what went on, because like I said, this was a fight, and I, as an only child, like I don't have siblings, and so I don't necessarily understand the relationship of siblings and like the elasticity necessarily, because I know siblings will like fight and rage and then be like, I'm ordering pizza, do you want some? You know, it's just like this crazy switch. But for only children, when we fight, it's like, we are very, very sensitive. Like we get mad and we stay mad. Like no only child has makeup sex. Like we just don't. I have hold a grudge forever sex. I'm mad for the rest of my life. I nurse my grudges like children. I house them in a collection like a museum. And now during this quarantine, I've had time to reflect on my grudges. And you know what? I uphold all of them. Fuck everybody. So apparently that's Kourtney's vibe too. And like I said, or maybe I didn't say this actually, she lost this one. And I don't just mean physically. She actually kind of won because she scratched the fuck out of Kim. She came off looking like such a clown. I'll spell it with a K if it makes you feel better, Court. First of all, she started it. She lunged at Kim. And okay, yes, Kim was needling her. She was, absolutely. But I don't think like lunging Captain America style at your sister when you're 40 is ultra productive. It's kind of white trash. So that was weird. And then in the aftermath, it just literally, she got worse. She did not get better. And I saw almost no clarity from her, zero self-awareness. What I saw was a deeper entrenchment into her victim narrative. Why? She couldn't accept feedback, and that is a hallmark of a victim narrative. We're gonna break that down. But first, I know what you guys are thinking. Shallon, you literally just did a video on Rihanna, how to fake confidence, and you said Kourtney Kardashian's was one of your confidence idols that you default to in your mind. I'm zipping myself into a Kourtney Kardashian like power suit when you don't feel confident. That's true. After watching that episode last night, I'm starting to change that. But Kourtney has her moments, you know, and just because we like a celebrity, and this is when fandom goes into standom, which is very toxic. It's like, yeah, I can see Kourtney has a lot of really cool qualities that I like. She walks into an event and she is unflappable. And that's something I need in my life. And also a reason I like her is because she hangs out with like 21-year-olds. I mean, she dates 21-year-old. No, I'm not 40, but like, I'm also not 21. And she doesn't feel weird and out of place with people. And so when I have to be in situations like it's fashion week and I'm like, I feel like the oldest and also shortest person here, you know, I'm like, you know what? Kourtney wouldn't say that. She wouldn't feel that way. So I zip up my Kourtney suit in those instances. But I can also accept or reject her other behavior. I'm looking at her and I'm like, clown with a K, okay? This is not good. So here's what happened. She was like windmill arms, scratched Kim up, Kris Jenner could not have fucking cared less. She's like, I'm drunk at the Ritz. I've been drunk at the Ritz recently, and you know what, Kris? I get it. I get where your head's at. It's not with the fuck shit back in Calabasas. And Malika and Khadijah, Khloe's friends, the twins, they kind of staged what seemed to be an intervention on Kourtney, and they're like, okay, what we want from you, and they said this throughout, this was their party line, more heart, less claws, you know? Approach these situations from a heart standpoint and not a defensiveness thing, because these are your sisters. Even if they weren't, they're people you care about. Even if they aren't, they're people you work with, right? So you got to come to some sort of agreement. And that's been the central issue between Kourtney and her sisters is she doesn't want to do the show anymore, and she shows up with a bad attitude. Now look, we've talked about boundaries and how, like, yeah, Kourtney has the right to be over it, but then you fucking quit. Do any of you, and I know you all have this one coworker and you're like, oh, not them again, because they've got a bad attitude. They don't want to be there. It's like, none of us want to be here. All of us want to be at home, right? If you're going to show up, you put a smile on your face and you do it, okay? That's work. That's why it's called work and not play, because there's an element of labor. Labor's not fun. It's exhausting. And like, she did make the commitment to do the season, so cowboy the fuck up, girl. So I understand where her sisters are coming from, and I've always been on like team Kim and Khloe with this, where it's like, this is your job. And one thing Kourtney said later in the episode when they were in Armenia, and it was like a lot of paparazzi. She's like, I don't like being a celebrity. And Kim was just like, the look on her face was such gold. So it's like, first of all, bitch, you are, and it's not a genie you can put back in the bottle. Second of all, do you like your mansion in Hidden Hills? Do you like your Range Rover? Do you love that private plane? Where do you think that comes from? She's walling herself off from this construct more and more and more. She's not reaching self-awareness. She's working backwards, right? And she's entrenching herself in that victim narrative. Now, there's some things that she said during this. After the intervention with Malika and Khadijah, the girls all sat down together with Khloe and Kim and the twins. And Kourtney was just an asshole from the jump. From the jump. Dick. But apparently she had a very productive conversation with Kim off screen and said that she was really mad at Khloe because Khloe didn't defend her. And Khloe's like, Khloe clearly didn't think that that was valid, but she respected it and recognized it was valid because it was Kourtney's feelings, and Kourtney's feelings are therefore valid. Put that in your back pocket. Spoiler alert, that's not a two-way street with Kourtney. So Khloe was like, okay, she sent her this big long text. I would love to talk to you. We're sisters, blah, blah, blah. And basically Kourtney like negged her and sent her like a photo of a plane. It's like, okay. So once again, Khloe goes out on this emotional risky limb, is the bigger person, takes the high road, and Kourtney undercuts her. She either cannot rise to that level communicatively and say, you know what, I also want to share something. She can't do it. So it's activated the flight or fight response. And we see this in Kourtney all the time. Flight or fight, and we've talked about this recently in our video about confirmation bias last week. So check out more about fight or flight there. It's like, if I'm being presented with information that is contrary to either what I want or how I feel about myself, I am either going to fight it, which Kourtney literally did, or I'm going to flight. I'm going to divorce and distance myself from this information and this person, and I'm going to text back a picture of a plane. So that tells me just how triggered Kourtney is. And when I posted this video last week and we talked about Kourtney, and some of you guys, one of you guys in particular, had a really, really interesting theory. You're like, I think Kourtney is extremely low confidence. I think she's extremely low self-esteem. And the reason she needles her sisters and is so spiky and says really spiteful, like condescending things is because then there's a fight and she gets to be mean to feel powerful. And that also would relate to why she's so obsessed with her kids. I mean, of course, everyone loves their kids. Maybe y'all don't now, do y'all? Stuck in quarantine with them. That's interesting. Haven't been hearing much about Shallon. When are you getting pregnant? Haven't been hearing that lately. How interesting. But she wants to go back to her kids. And that's always her excuse. I want to spend more time with my kids. Bitch, every working woman usually does. Well, again, maybe not anymore. But like, no shit. Like, do you think women who work just always just choose to. They work because they have to, genius. And the reason I think, I mean, obviously she loves her children, but the secondary reason why she's so obsessed with being in that family structure is because she has absolute power. She's essentially a single parent. I mean, there's no other parent living in the house with her. So when they're there, it is her kingdom. And as a daughter of a single parent, I know what that's like. I know what that's like, okay? Yeah. So I understand why she's drawn to this family structure, but I don't necessarily think it's for the healthiest reasons all the time. And I would love to say that perhaps one day she will become aware of that. It is clear to me she will not be. We've talked before about how I have read a theory and a study that said only 5% of people are capable of insight. 5%. I do not think Kourtney Kardashian is one of them. I think she's capable of maybe hurling insults at other people that are veiled as insightfulness. Like, you're doing this because you hate your life. That's not insight. And if she can't be insightful into the behavior of others, she's not insightful into her own behaviors. I mean, it's hard enough when it is that way. Like, I know a lot of my friends who can psychoanalyze other people, and I'm like, hey, do you know why you keep power calling this guy that you like? And it's like, miss me with that. Like, that's not happening. So she said some things that were very telling during this confrontation with the sisters and the twins. First of all, she was like, would not let Khloe get a sentence in edgewise, like couldn't finish a sentence. And all she kept saying was, this is unproductive. This is stupid. This is unproductive. This is unproductive. And Kim made a good point. She's like, well, maybe it's productive for Khloe. And that is significant because it means Kourtney is not interested in a two-way street, right? Again, it's the concept of power. It's her way or the highway. And now, wait a minute. Okay, well, we'll save the end now. We'll save the end now. When Khloe says something like, you've hurt my feelings, and Kourtney pops back like, okay, sorry you hate your life. And Khloe's like, what are you talking about? Like, Kourtney goes for the throat, fight or flight. So let's talk about why she's doing this. Why she's doing this. We've spoken before, and we talked a lot about Taylor Swift and her victim narrative. She is, in so many ways, queen of the victims, And we have sort of like a roundabout way of proving her victim narrative, because what has she become that so many victims become? A bully. Victims become covert bullies. Why? Because they feel entitled to do whatever they want because they're in pain. That's one reason. The other reason is something we call leveling. I think Dr. Phil came up with this term. When our ego feels attacked and vulnerable, whether it's, oh my God, there's this pretty girl at the party and I can't handle it, or it's, oh my God, my sisters are giving me feedback that I sure as heck don't want, we have to puff ourselves up or cut the other person down in order to level that playing field. Usually it's a combination, right? So victims are doing both of these things because, yeah, cutting someone else down can fall under the purview of being a bully, And she was checking all of these boxes during this conversation with Khloe and Kim. Like, sorry you hate your life. This is unproductive. I didn't call you stupid. Tell me when. Tell me when. It's like honing in on these details to try to be right. She was right fighting. Right fighting is truly the most destructive thing you can do in a relationship. It's the most destructive thing you can do. I'm trying to think of how I want to say this. I talked a lot about my history in Army ROTC, and we talked about this during Evil Week and how to beat your enemy. When you're evaluating an enemy, you have to analyze, do I want peace or do I want victory? If you want peace, Khloe wanted peace. The path was very clear. Let's talk this out. I want to work collaborative. Kourtney wanted victory. She wanted victory. She needed victory to assuage her ego, which felt incredibly attacked, fight or flight. And she decided to fight, right? And when you fight, you don't want peace, you want victory. Like, that's what a fight is. You're trying to win. She was physically fighting somebody. And a victim feels like not only is it, their obligation to fight somebody and win, it's their right. They are owed this. And right fighting is basically boiling down to, you can be right or you can be happy. Like when she was like, tell me when I called you stupid, tell me when. Okay, that was right fighting. Like, no, Khloe couldn't be like, you called September 23rd, 6:02 p.m. And Kourtney felt like she was winning. Like that was a win for that argument. And you can live your life like that. You can conduct your relationships like that. And guess what? You're not gonna have very many left because people don't fucking like that. I, as you can imagine, am an excellent arguer. I'm an excellent rhetorician. I have an incredible vocabulary. I think very well and very quickly on my feet, and I can keep it up as long as it takes. I will fucking body you if you go to war with me. So it's always in my nature to right fight. And I have to take a step back and be like, the true win is a harmonious relationship. The true win is harmony here. Whether I'm talking to a customer service rep at Amazon or I'm talking to my boyfriend, the win is harmony. But Kourtney doesn't see that because Kourtney can't see anything besides her own victim narrative. And it was interesting in the episode when they were like, why is she like this? Like, why is her self-esteem like this? Because they finally reached that conclusion that her self-esteem is really, really low. And they're like, well, I think it was when she broke up with Scott, you know? Like that took such a toll on her. And it seems to me she has not worked through that. She has not worked through spending a decade of her life with a fucking cheater. And let me tell you, girls, as from a place of experience, I get how hard that is to work through. I get it. But when I talk to you guys one-on-one, what word comes up? Starts with an A, autopsy. In order for us to move on from things like this, we have to do an autopsy of a situation, not for all the things they did wrong, because we know what they did wrong. And to focus on what Scott did wrong for Kourtney is only going to get her deeper, deeper, deeper into the victim narrative, right? I was abused, I was taken advantage of, I was lied to. Like, you already feel wounded. You already feel wounded. Don't you want to feel better? Don't you want to be able to look at this situation and be like, you know what? I'm going to look at how I contributed to this, because in every bad outcome in our life, whether it's a bad grade or a bad relationship or a bad whatever, we played a part. And the longer we lie to ourselves and say that we didn't, the more we're going to feel victimized. So we got to look back and be like, what did I do? How did I contribute to this? She doesn't seem to have done that with Scott. Maybe she has. I have no idea what she's doing behind the scenes, but based on how she behaves, I would say dollars to donuts, she's not doing that kind of work. Why? She doesn't want to, because now she gets to be a bully. Now she gets to have power, right? Instead of pulling out that psychological splinter and healing, she just gets to walk around in pain and spray pain onto other people. And that feels good. Now with someone who was victimized by a cheater and a liar and gaslighted for a decade of her life, she gets to go around gaslighting other people. Hurt people, right? Victims become abusers. We see this in all sorts of categories. And we see it in relationships. We see it with Kourtney Kardashian. So how can we clip this in ourselves? Because like I said, we've all been there. Some of us, ideally we're there in flashes, in moments, and it's okay to feel victimized. I'm not saying you guys should never feel victimized and that you're never a victim, because you absolutely are. I was a victim of a shitty ex. We've all, yes. But to stay there, and you're just going to get in this loop of fucking pity. And you know what? Nobody wants to hear it. And I know you guys say that I'm harsh about things like mental health and getting into therapy and like, you got to do this stuff. Yeah, it's because, do you want to be the Kourtney? Do you want to come off looking like an asshole to everyone? Why? I like to be a victim too. I like to be a martyr. I like to wallow. I like to be petty. It's useful. We all do. We all love it. But more than that, more than those things, I like people to like me. I like people to love me. I like people to respect me. I like people to pay me. And those things can't happen if I'm on that other side, right? Eventually, people pull back. And this is what's happening with Kourtney and the show. It's like people are pulling back from you, girl. And that's, you take yourself out of this reality show. What is poosh? Like, who? What? Stop trying to make fetch happen. So what can we do in our life? It comes down to feedback. Because one thing they said in the video, or in the show all the time, is Kourtney was like, this false narrative. I don't want to hear this false narrative anymore. And Kim is like, it's not false if everyone's saying it to you. If more than 3 people have given you the same feedback, you need to pull back and look in the mirror. The wisdom from the mouth, from the surgerized man-made mouth of a mogul. And it's true. If you keep getting the feedback, or even if you're not getting feedback, if you're getting feedback from life and you're watching patterns, repeat, why do I always date assholes? Why do I always get ghosted? I don't know, boo, who's the common denominator? It's you. So you could be the victim and blame everybody else. It's a big worldwide conspiracy, or you could take a good hard look in the mirror. And this is why feedback is so important. Because look, let's talk first about why we don't like feedback, because we don't. Negative feedback pings into our caveman self, our tribal self, because it makes us feel like we are going to be ostracized from the group. And historically, ancient times, that was a matter of survival. You get kicked out of the tribe, you don't last through the winter. That's just the way it is. So when social inclusion is truly one of our largest needs as human beings. We need friends, we need a group, we need a tribe, we need to be liked, we need to feel like we're part of the fabric of society. We don't, we end up a fucking school shooter, right? So that's what it kicks up for us, is this feedback is going to ostracize me from this class, this job, this family, this group of friends, this relationship, and I'm going to be out in the cold and I'm going to die. But are we? Are we going to die? Trampled to death by a woolly mammoth? Gored by a saber-toothed tiger? Probably not. Probably not. And once we recognize how sort of silly that fear is, that it's an ancestral boogeyman, it's a tribal monster under the bed, it demystifies it and it takes that power away. And then we get the crucial trait that you need for self-improvement: neutrality. You get just that sliver of objectivity where you're like, I now am not taking everything so personally. I can put some distance between the speaker and me, and my ego is set aside. Because here's the thing about egos. When our ego is weak, we don't feel like we have a sense of self. And why? Of course, Kourtney feels this way, because compared to Kim, who has her makeup line, Skims, blah, 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 Khloe, who seems content not having these things, she's chill. Kendall, who's a model, Kylie, who's a billionaire, their egos are fully formed. Well, I mean, Kylie, we talk about, but comparatively, in the sense of there's something else that they're deriving their self-worth off of besides just the show. Kourtney doesn't necessarily have that, except for her kids, right? And so her ego is in a place of flux, of non-strength, of weakness. And when our ego is weak, ironically, our personality is extremely rigid. Our feedback receptors are extremely rigid. When someone is truly confident, you can give them feedback and they're like, oh, I'll take that into consideration. Okay. If you give me feedback on how I perform these videos, and if someone's like, you stuttered that one time, or you say too much, I'm like, okay, go ahead and try to do this. Try to do what I do, sweetheart. Go ahead. It rolls off me because I know the talent that I have. I know the skill set that I have, and I know it because I do it, right? I know that I have good writing skills because I do it. I know that I'm a good friend and daughter and all of this stuff because I have that empirical evidence. And it doesn't seem like Kourtney does, because she's not allowing herself insight. She's in a fight or flight response all the time, right? And it's just this cycle that keeps perpetuating. So when you can look at feedback and be like, I'm giving a little bit of neutrality here, you're going to receive it better. It's also important to note that psychologically, we take feedback better from people we societally deem are allowed to give it. Teachers, coaches, doctors, trainers, people like that. If your doctor said you need to eat more vegetables, you're like, all right. If your friend said it at dinner after you ordered a burger, you'd be like, fuck, pardon me? That would not be well received. We have not anointed that person to be a feedback giver. So maybe let's try to change that in our mind. Let's just in our mind be like, okay, I am anointing Diane, Katie, and Becca my feedback givers. They are coaches in my life. They are trainers, they are doctors, they are professionals. So when they give me feedback, I might not like it just because I don't like it from the doctor either. But I'm going to accept that this is now part of their role in my life. So it doesn't feel so bad. It doesn't feel so sticky and so like, so jarring and unwelcome. I'm like, no, this is part of what they're supposed to do. This is part of their role here. And you can make this an IRL thing. You can be like, hey, I want to get better. I know you want to get better. You're having problems at work, you're having problems with family, whatever it might be. Let's be feedbackers for each other. Let's be feedback coaches for one another and allow ourselves the elasticity to share feedback with one another that we can accept or reject. We can accept or reject. We could even do monthly feedback time. Instead of getting together and just scrolling on Insta and laying around and getting blacked out on Kim Crawford, me, let's sit down and do like an anonymous like suggestion box of feedback for one another. Can you imagine how much your life might change? How quickly? And most importantly, how it wouldn't wound you in the process. Negative feedback is never going to be a good thing, but it turns into growth. And growth is painful. Growth is awkward and it's sticky and it's uncomfortable. We're all in this like self-care, make yourself happy. That's great, but that doesn't lead to a lot of growth. Things that are uncomfortable, that changes you. And you can decide if it changes you for positive or negative. Kourtney has decided it's only going to change her for negative. It's going to make her bitchier, harder to get along with, impossible to reason with, and just basically a fucking bully. It's going to make her an asshole. It could make you better because the words that she's receiving are probably the words you've received in other categories. You know, at some point in your life, you probably will hear, hey, you're not communicating well. Hey, you're hurting people's feelings, even if you don't mean to. So when that happens, pull back, be like, this does not mean I'm going to be ostracized from the group. I'm not going to be kicked out of the tribe and die alone. And this also doesn't mean that there's like this is bottomless and I can't fix or change anything. Usually with a very simple set of modifications, I can switch my behavior into something productive. And I'm going to now decide to end the right fighting. I'm going to collaborate towards peace instead of victory. Then you stop being a victim. Then you start being, ironically, more of a warrior. Even though you're not trying to fight for victory, you are fighting for a betterment of self. And what's more of a victory than that? I want to know your thoughts on their fight. I want to know your thoughts on feedback. Tell me some feedback that bodied you at the time, like horrible. But now in retrospect, you're like, that was exactly right. I didn't want to hear it, but I needed to hear it.